We acknowledge the land we stand on is the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit,
the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations,
Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It is basically full swing for the Real World Film Festival, and I could not be more excited to moderate and host this panel. So I'm going to jump in right away by quickly introducing myself. Hi there. My name is Chattrisse Dolabaille. I am a writer, performer, producer, and a big fan of a bunch of the people who you're going to be hearing from very shortly. We do have today, CBC presents the creative team behind the hit series Diggstown. So thanks, first of all, to all of you for taking some of your time today, and in particular to you, Floyd, who we'll sort of mention first is definitely in transit as we speak. But we do have joining us Floyd Kane, who created the show, runs the show, is everything to the show. We have Cory, who has directed the first 3 episodes of season 3, which I hope you have all been watching. And if not, CBC Gem is your friend. They'll be able to help you out there. And we're joined by some of the cast members as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Vinessa Antoine, Shailene Garnett, Nicole Muñoz. I mean, thank you so much for giving up all of your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like everyone can hear everyone. Everyone can see everyone. And because not necessarily everyone at home has been all caught up with the series, could be a good idea to let people take a few sneak peeks of some of our clips, or perhaps they haven't necessarily watched all 3 of the seasons. So I think we'll jump in with a really great sort of trip down memory lane from season 1, episode 1, and then maybe ask Floyd if he wants to speak with us just a little bit about what that means to him.
My life was just a spark, just a flicker in the dark.
Everything turned out perfectly. Oh, that's actually Patsy. Of course she does. She loves it.
You are a disgrace to this community.
Reverend.
What? I will tell you the same thing I tell the thieves and the pimps and the dealers. We don't want you. Ain't no shelter here for you.
You're gonna act like you don't know me. Miss Brooks, Mr. Glasgow.
Not in this church, in people's homes, in this community. We are done with filth like you.
Mercy.
Take me home. Marcy! Marcy!
Thank you so much. So, Floyd, please speak with us on why that clip is such an important moment of the show to you.
I just think for me that colors, getting to see, the the Black North Preston community and the church, all of that is so iconic to me in terms of thinking about that community, and we've never seen that on Canadian television before. That's us as opposed to looking at the U.S. And so for me, that was just a really significant moment. It was also a very emotional day when we were shooting there. So I just feel like, in terms of thinking about the idea of the show and what the show means, from my perspective, in terms of wanting to capture, the Black Nova Scotian community and present that to the world, I feel like this tiny piece of the show actually encompasses all of that.
Absolutely. And then you just touched on it, and I'm so glad you did. This is a piece of Black Canadian culture and history that hadn't been seen on Canadian TV before. Can you tell us just a little bit about the process of getting enough people to believe in the vision of the show that became Diggstown? Because it came to the screen in 2019. I'm sure you were working on it for years and years before that.
Honestly, it was a different thing when I was first thinking about doing a cop show about a Black female cop set in Nova Scotia. And then, it really it changed in terms of, basically someone said, what about doing a legal show? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And then it was about figuring out what that show was about, because really what came to me before the procedural part of the show came to me, the part of the show that really resonated was just this idea of a Black woman surfing on Martinique Beach, conquering that Atlantic Ocean. To me, that was a key visual in terms of the whole series. So it really, if we're talking about length in terms of how long it actually took, part of the thing about doing any kind of show on Canadian television is you have to have champions within the network. And I feel like, the team at CBC at the time, including Sally Cato, who's still there, were really behind the show, and so they, when we went in, the arms were open in terms of they were ready for the pitch. And, and that's a big part of getting something on air. It's yes, you can make it as great as you can, but the network, the executives have to be ready for the show, and they have to be ready to dive in and get behind it whole hog. So yeah, that's sort of how it came to be.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for letting us know about that. So we might have been watching Vinessa as a cop in another universe.
Yeah.
All of you as cops, I guess. You would have just all been members of maybe the Halifax police force. One of the things that makes this show so special is that there are shows who maybe decide that something like an ongoing pandemic should be left out of the storyline because there could be maybe a fear or a worry that that would make something less timeless. But everything, almost everything, correct me if I'm wrong, that is woven into the episodes of Diggstown is happening or recently happened. All these court cases that Marcy takes us through or her contemporaries take us through, it's not a bunch of made up stuff that finds its way into a procedural show. They're events that have been inspired by real life. Is that, most of the time at least, that seems to be the case, correct?
Yeah, I think what we try to do is we try to find an issue or a story, and then we give it the Diggstown makeover, right? We kind of infuse it with our own, I guess, for lack of a better term, special sauce. So that's kind of how we do it. And in episode 3, which was on last week, for us, there have been all of these cases involving, young black men being killed by police officers. And we kind of looked at it and went, okay, so what if in the DeFonte Miller case, what if it would have been one of the cops who would have been killed by him? And what does that look like? And that was the jumping off point for wanting to tell that story.
Definitely. And then it leads to quite a bit of turmoil for Marcy. Obviously, I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers as best as I can throughout this program. But I would love to hear from Vinessa and or Cory on this next question. Do either of you have in mind, I guess, a news event, a cultural touchstone, something that has not yet been worked into a Diggstown script, but you're hoping it does, or you've kind of nudged Floyd about it, or you'd like to see it be explored in a future episode?
Wow. It's a good question. I feel like we've touched on so many, issues, especially this season coming up. I don't know.
Or a favorite one that has recently been covered, because as you say, there have been so many of them.
This last week that just aired for sure is one of my favorites, and there's another one coming up, episode 7, that I also love, that deals with sexual assault in the LGBTQ plus community. That was a very good episode. I don't know, Cory, what do you think?
I think it's a good question. This is one of the, I don't really project anything onto the show. I think it's one of the funnest things for me. I mean, this is like, I guess I've done 8 now. It's always exciting when I get the scripts and see what we're covering. Or it's always exciting when Floyd gives me a little hint beforehand, a couple of months when we're chatting about what we might be doing. And I think it's, that's always surprising to me, and it's always refreshing, but it's also something like, of course we're going to go there. So I mean, there's so many things, and I said there's so many things that we could cover, and there's so many things to be covered. And the show is a nature of making its way to those things. So there's nothing particular that I'm hoping to see, because I know we'll get there somehow, in whichever way we cover it.
Awesome. Okay, I do want to quickly pause and say hi to Dwayne, who just joined us. Thanks so much for being here with us. So we've got 4 cast members now, and I would love it I think we have time, if each of you can give your answer to this next question, because we do know that real life has influenced the creation of the storylines that we get to see in Diggstown. Are there any real life characters that each of you can say influenced your acting choices? Whether Canadian or not, this is sort of a wide open question to any of the actors who wants to go first.
I don't pull from any other characters. I have a bad habit of not watching all that much TV and film.
Relatable.
I'm working on. But usually I pull from people close to me in life, in scenarios that I've seen with my own eyes and have at least experienced, either through my own of being there, or through just feeling what they were feeling when explaining what happened. And that leaves me with a more honest performance, I feel. And yeah, it just kind of gives you something more to be grounded in. At least that's my experience with kind of feeding off of something in life for acting.
Absolutely.
In season 1, we had a hairstylist named Elvira, who is a huge personality, and she always said ting ting. So I took that for Iris. That's probably the only thing I took from anybody.
I think that Marcy is sort of a mashup of a lot of my experiences, but also I think inevitably, I think I was very much influenced by the television that I watched, particularly a lot of American television, and I tried very, very hard to kind of put that aside in developing the character. And so I think organically, there's probably bits and pieces of, you know, my entire life in Marcy, and also you know, people that I know for sure.
Mm-hmm. And Dwayne, did you want to jump in? Either, it doesn't have to be like a TV or film character, but are there any real life people who have found their way into your Avery?
Real life people that have found Avery, yeah. I would say there's a lot of actual Dwayne in Avery.
Okay.
The reason I say that is just because for me, when I first started crafting and creating the character of Avery, I really wanted to connect to the emotional side. I wasn't really super focused on the lawyer and, you know, the legal jargon and stuff like that. I knew, like, I felt, for some odd reason, I felt comfortable with that part of Avery. But the part that I didn't feel comfortable was just how open he was with his emotions, because that's so far from who Dwayne is. So for me, like, how do I bridge the gap that I feel comfortable enough to bear my emotions as this character Avery, but not let Dwayne get in the way of blocking that, because I have a tendency myself of just like being very like closed off and not wanting to share my emotions. So for me, that was kind of weirdly enough where I pulled from, was like, how do I pull this out of myself in order to make the character believable? So that's kind of where it came from for me.
Okay. Love it. Great answers, everyone. That's very interesting kind of peek behind the curtain. So thank you for that.
Wow. I love that scene.
Melanie's amazing. I love her.
Yeah, I mean, the two of you, that was a really powerful series of moments. So I can see why, if you had to choose one scene, that's the one you picked. Thank you so much for having us include that today. We do have a couple of audience questions that it might be fun to get to. This one might piggyback with the scene you just chose to share with us, but someone wants to know and is asking everyone, what was your most challenging scene and why? Anybody?
Yeah, no, I'll go.
Sure.
Funny enough, the most challenging scene, I believe, so far was actually back in season 2 for Avery, and it was with Vinessa, and it was between Avery and Marcy when he's drunk and he has to bare his soul, and he doesn't know how to do it because Marcy's on a date with Percy, and you know, Avery just didn't like that at all, and it was just the fact of having to, one, play drunk, because that's never an easy thing to do, to play drunk, but it was just this thing of like confronting, you know, Avery's love of his life is Marcy, so for him it was just like confronting her in that moment in a way that he thought was right, but it was completely embarrassing. So that was actually a really challenging scene that I continually think about to this day, even through season 3. So weirdly enough, it was season 2 that scene was a difficult scene for me, at least it was.
Okay, and Vinessa, did you want to share a really challenging scene for you?
Mine's also from season 2, and so Floyd decided to write 5 pages of dialogue in the courtroom for me as I cross-examined one of the witnesses. And to this day, like I have to say, like I'm really happy with the way the scene came out, but like I must have studied that backward. You were there when I was just like, I was running it in my sleep, I feel like. It's a longer scene for TV. It's not, you know, a crazy long scene, I'm sure, for, you know, a play or a film, but 5 pages of just mostly Marcy talking was pretty challenging. So I'm waiting for, you know, 10 pages next season, Floyd.
I'll piggyback that, because for me, my most challenging scenes are also the court scenes, but for like the total opposite reason. Because when Iris is in the courtroom, she's usually just an observer. And so we're in these rooms, the lights, it's hot, there's a ton of dialogue, as Vinessa just said. And then I'm there kind of, you know, trying to keep myself awake. And then the camera, the few times that the camera does try to get my reactions, I'm like, okay, keep your eyes open, Shailene, keep your eyes open. So it's, I love watching it on TV, but just to shoot it over and over and over again. And, you know, for the complete opposite reason from you, Vinessa, like I'm not sitting there learning 5, 6, 7 pages of dialogue. It's like the total opposite. So, and I'm pretty sure this season in between some of the takes, I was like, okay, guys, let me just take a quick rest, close my eyes again. So damn,
Shailene, but
I know,
Yeah.
I'm spoiled. It's
The one or two times that the camera is on you is actually that we're always Dwayne can vouch for this. The camera is always on you all the time. If you're with me, I've always got you. Like me and Dwayne one time, I'm like, we have this shot going, the same type of thing. Dwayne's sitting there, and all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, Dwayne, you got to stop doodling, man. I'm on you. And he's like, what? Because we got this we got this cruising thing. We're like totally moving our because we're very active, but we're always so it's always funny. So we can anyway.
You must have caught the
I see it all. I see it all.
Cory's been over here wondering when you were going to admit to it, so it finally happened.
There it is.
Apparently, Cory's been watching the whole time. So, Nicole, I mean, whatever you feel your most challenging scene was might be one that we haven't seen yet, but is there one that you wanted to, hopefully avoiding spoilers, let us know about?
Sure. I think we're leading into a scene we might show, but yes, it's definitely always the court scenes. And we shot a lot of them right at the beginning for me. And Cory helped a lot. Thank you. Saved my ass. By getting me out of what felt like, I mean, the best way I can describe it is almost that like imposter syndrome where I felt like I was standing there and, you know, in my head, the dialogue is no one believes me. No one believes a word that's coming out of my mouth. What's going on? What am I doing in a blazer and heels and pantyhose? Like, this is so wrong. And then just to ground yourself even in the court dialogue and at least the scene and the importance of what you're saying is a big help for those kind of scenes. But the other thing that really helped me is, I mean, I have Vinessa there as a role model and somebody to model myself after. So that kind of actually answers your previous question as who do I bring into my scenes? And even though we play kind of adversaries, a lot of the way I've modeled how I speak in court or just the confidence I needed for that, I've taken from you, Vinessa. So thank you for that.
Wow. Thanks, Nicole. Wow. That's really sweet.
Excellent. Wow, these audience questions are flooding in. Okay, so let's see if we can actually bang out 2 of them in one because a couple of them are related. One audience member is asking how shooting in Halifax is different from shooting in Vancouver or LA. And another audience member is asking what was different to you for working on this show compared to other sets you've been on. So anyone who wants to answer either location or, you know, being in a courtroom versus being on some other type of environment. It seems like the audience is really curious about these sorts of things.
I can say from my personal experience, this show, I feel like this cast has come together in a way that I haven't experienced on other shows before. And I say this in that we hang out willingly, often, you know, and we've had some really great, deep conversations. We've seen each other when we haven't even been shooting. And I just, honestly, I haven't had that before, and I'm really grateful for that.
It is a real company feel. It kind of has that old school sort of rep company feel, and the fact that you said we changed, but we also have, you know, a large part of the community has embraced us. I find that it's, you know, working. We also on that show we've had to create a method. We've had to create a way of working. We've had to create a routine, and we've sort of had to set our own standards because necessarily the show doesn't fit into other models. And that's everything from how we shoot the courts to how we're constantly changing our directions and how we're really, we're committed in finding, a tone or the way the show, but we let the show evolve. And that's something that I find very refreshing, also really challenging in our show, is that we're constantly trying to find ways to grow and ways to move, especially how our characters move through the world and grow, and the way we tackle subject matter and how we try to shoot with care for each one of those topics or each one of those episodes. So I find that it's really quite special. I'm really spoiled on it. And I take it with me to go, but it's also the camaraderie of the cast is really special. And all those things that everyone was talking about that are really hard. It's hard to shoot all of those things. Like the bar scene is with what Dwayne was talking about and Shailene, those were on the same day. We're trying to get something with not much time, and we're shooting it in the daytime with a bar that has floor to ceiling windows on a 2nd floor. So we're spending a lot of time, and everyone's coming together, and we're trying to figure out, how are we really going to adapt to make this story and tell the gut and the emotion that we need to. And it eventually falls in. We all trust, and it just happens. And that magic, you get that magic for sure on other shows, but there's something really different about this one. And it's perhaps it is that company feel, or that the intimacy, or the, we're all going for that same goal, but it's really quite amazing, quite special.
Yeah, I mean, you used the word magic a second ago, which I love. There is an audience question specifically for you, Cory. So aside from magic, which we presume you can't control just yet, they're asking, how do you help get your cast in the right zone for the really dramatic scenes?
Oh, wow. How do I help? Well, the best thing I can do is support. It's going to sound, not to sound like out in space, but to support the truth that they're bringing in. And I have to adapt as much as possible. I always have a way that I think something might be the tone, but my job is to really see what's happening, support what's happening, and help direct with safety that to the goal, I guess. So, one of the things that I don't think I do is try to force feed or have an actor fake it. So we've got to be careful. Like the last episode we just did, even that even going back to that is the most challenging scene I think I've done, is because we're putting each other in positions of we're exploring trauma. And we're exploring how we face trauma, how we confront trauma, how we oppose trauma, how we do our jobs inside of these things that affect us personally as well. So it's really just, trying to be safe and respecting what we're all bringing to the table, especially what an actor's bringing to the table in these scenes. I'm there to learn and listen from them as much as I am to capture something.
I just want to say quickly, what a lot of people forget is that when we're doing an emotional scene, we're doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And what's great about Cory is he is so generous and he is so considerate. He is a true actor's director. And when we shot 206, when Iris had this freak out, Cory, you always made sure I was okay. Are you ready? And what you did, which I've never experienced before, was you specifically broke it up in chunks, the sequence in chunks, so that I didn't overexert myself in the first 2-3 takes, and I always remember that. And I thought that was really special and really kind of you to do, because it's been common where, I don't know if Nicole or Dwayne or Vinessa can relate, but you go all in, you're so ready to do a scene, and then 4 or 5 takes, you're exhausted, and the director wants to keep pushing you, and I've never had that with you, Cory. So thank you for that.
Cory's the man, period.
Yeah. Stop. Moving on.
He said, stop, moving on. Okay, so what we can do then, there's another clip, and this one has been chosen by Vinessa. So for those of you who have been watching every single episode when it comes out, you have not seen this scene yet. And Vinessa, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro before we roll it?
Is this from this season?
Yeah,
Yes,
from season
obviously.
3, episode 4.
So this is Marcy has obviously, if you've been caught up to date, you know that Marcy's quit legal aid, and she is going to be starting something new. And in this scene, she's going to be perhaps working with someone new. I'll just leave it there because honestly, there's really nothing I can say that's not going to make this a huge spoiler. But it gets weird from this point on, I'll say, in Diggstown. I'll say that.
Okay, let's see what she might be telling us about.
This is about establishing a law firm that practices next level legal aid, like access to all of the skills and talent of lawyers who excel in their fields, but at no cost. The firm would be spearheaded by me.
Okay.
That's a very, very short clip there. I didn't realize it would be that short.
Wow. I guess suspense is the main goal of the length of that clip.
They really did not want to reveal anything, Vinessa.
Wow.
That dress is enough to make everyone tune in.
That's true. That's
seen it.
For a good
Let's not
chunk
talk
of
about
the
the dress.
audience at home. That's all that was needed.
The famous dress.
Let's not talk about the dress.
I love it.
Now that we've said this, we're going to be flooded with audience questions asking us about the dress. But before that happens, someone wants to know who forgets the most lines on set.
Probably me. 100% me.
There's so many of them, and Floyd gives you 5 pages at a time.
Well,
and...
she has the most, so
Yeah.
Of course.
Aw.
Sorry, she just wanted to jump up. Yeah, I think I definitely forget the most. I try to not, because there's such a comfortability level when you have your lines down. You know, there's just an ease. It makes everyone so much more relaxed. You know, and you can really just play. The problem is obviously, you know, like I'm in, you know, every day. So there's just I usually learn my lines while I'm already on set for the following week. So as I'm working, I'm layering in stuff for the next week or the next few days, so that when I come home, I'm not like starting from scratch. I'm just continuously layering and working, which is why, you know, it becomes a very tiring process when you're working, which is
Absolutely, yeah, understandable. You're carrying the series, right? You have been since day one.
To be fair, Floyd sometimes comes in for you with some monologues, be like, "Yo, I got a little script thing for you here." Like, this long. You know what I'm saying? Just like,
yes, he does. But also what I love, listen, what Floyd's trying to do, what Floyd is doing, not trying to do, what Floyd is doing is, you know, some of the vocabulary that he has all of us speaking, you know, is definitely, obviously we're talking about, you know, lawyer jargon and court jargon, but we're also like, you know, I think he's trying to elevate and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think that there is a way, an intelligent way of speaking, particularly as a woman of color, that we just don't always get to see. And, you know, and I think Floyd definitely drives that home. And so there's times where I am just like, what am I actually saying? But I know why he's doing it, and I think it's brilliant. That's all I'm going to say.
Cool. Absolutely. And I mean, I wasn't going to ask this till the end, but I love that as a segue. So we're doing it now. I love how each of us, of course, is when we're creating things, we're going to be influenced by something that we were able to watch, whether it's when we were a little kid or when we were a little older, when we were in school. So all of you folks today, with all of the team members who aren't here, because it does take, of course, a massive team, you're helping to create a media landscape that is going to inspire future generations of actors, writers, showrunners, directors, filmmakers, all of these creative endeavors. So when all of you do think back about the shows that influenced you, because Floyd mentioned earlier on today what he wasn't seeing on TV, and Vinessa, you've just touched on again, something that is not often enough put up on screens for us to see. When you think back on all the shows that have influenced you personally, what is there that you hope people in the future will remember when they think back on seasons 1 through 3 of Diggstown? I know we're not trying to ram anything down anyone's throat, because that's not how any of this works. But when you go to work each day, is there something that you're hoping in the future, I hope we're remembered for this?
Tackling issues that are not often spoke about publicly. I think that's been the biggest thing for me, at least from my standpoint. The fact that Floyd and the writing team is not afraid to push boundaries when it comes to storylines. And they don't shy away from unhappy endings, because that's real life. Not every episode has a happy ending. Not every court moment has a happy ending. And I think those are the things that people need to see. People need to see that these things are really happening, whatever the issue is, but they're really happening. And there isn't always a nice little neat bow at the end of the story. Sometimes the story is just, it's ended in our eyes, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening behind the scenes that we never get to see. So for me, I guess the answer would just be allowing people to understand that those stories exist. They're uncomfortable, but they should be spoken about, and everyone has their time in the sun and should feel wanted and not unwanted.
Absolutely. Floyd, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's a more complicated thing in terms of legacy, because I feel like, a lot of the things that I wanted to accomplish with the show relate to behind the scenes. So the idea of trying to help grow a more inclusive production community in Nova Scotia, like that's something that we've been trying to do. The idea of being able to look at our show and see if we can figure out a way to use our show for change in terms of, like we're dealing with an issue in episode 301 around birth alerts. And this is a policy that, currently, I think only 3 provinces continue to carry out birth alerts in Canada, and one of them being Nova Scotia. And I think part of the idea of including that story in this season is to encourage the Nova Scotia government to basically stop the policy. So for me, like, what I hope people remember when they think about Diggstown is that this was a show that was that its legacy isn't more than just about simply entertaining. It's about actually presenting an industry and, a country with the idea that you can use television for social change and social enlightenment. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Love that. All right. Does anyone else want to touch on the legacy question? We do have another clip, and this one Nicole picked out that we're going to roll next. Okay, Nicole, please tell us why you wanted us to be able to take in, also from season 3, the clip we're going to see next.
I believe this is a clip with me and Brandon. And he's not here, so let's include him.
Great reason. Perfect. So let's have a look at that.
Ms. McKay is a respected elder who I've asked to give critical social and historical context to the grave harm facing Indigenous children taken from their communities.
Your Honor, she has no pertinent educational background or training.
Whatever happened to lived experience? This witness is revered in her community.
We simply don't believe Ms. McKay has enough relevant experience to assist the court.
She's a child advocate and a clan mother.
Maybe that's what she does in her spare time.
Her spare time?
Well, professionally, Ms. McKay runs a small coffee shop.
Your Honor, it is very important that the court understand Ms. McKay's role here. Her wisdom and authority has been passed down through generations of matriarchal lines.
Okay. It is astonishing how agreeable you are in person, Nicole, and how well you turn into this. I don't want to use the term villain. It's a little simplistic, but wow, do you do a good job of presenting very differently when you're being Ellery Lopez.
Thank you. That took a village, and you're looking at most of the people involved in helping that happen. Fun fact, that was my audition scene, so I got to do that one a lot of practice.
Okay. Yeah, love it. So when we do, talk about characters, and when we talk about the series moving forward, the audience has also asked anyone who does want to respond, and I'll begin with you if that's okay, Nicole. Is there somewhere that you'd like to see your character develop to that might be different from where we've seen them so far?
Yeah, actually, this season we meet Ellery Lopez, and I think a lot of the audience are going to have kind of the same reaction you had, whereas a bit villain is kind of the area. And then you see Ellery grow, and she comes to terms with a lot of her own ideas, and her character arc is a lot about change and self-discovery and coming into yourself, and what kind of ties need to be cut when you do that, what kind of issues come up and consequences. So I would love to see, instead of just her dealing with the consequences, I'd love finally for some fog to go and to see where exactly Ellery would go if it was just up to her.
All right, love that. Great answer. Sorry, Shailene, go ahead.
Earlier this season, Vinessa, she had showed me this clip. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a clip. It was like an extremely fatigued Black woman on the ground.
Oh my God! Yes.
Her. And
yes.
Okay, fill it in if I'm not sharing it correctly. But there was like this social worker who
I showed it to Floyd, I think.
Okay. So I think this was the height of the Black Lives Matter protests and everything. And I really don't remember where it was, but there was this woman, she was like exhausted and broken, and she was on the ground. She was like paralyzed with emotion. And I think there was cops. I think cops were around, people were videotaping, and this one social worker kind of stepped to her aid, and she got really into everyone's face, like in scolding them. I think it was like, shame on you. You should be, she's broken. Like, you shouldn't be just standing there, or something like that. And frankly, I would love and I would grovel for the opportunity to play that role in this show. And I think it's necessary. I think, Floyd, you've been doing such a great job at reversing stereotypes and kind of showing true issues, bringing the truth to what's been going on. One thing I would like to see more of is what the weight of that. And, not like we're all strong characters, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of social and cultural weight to everything we've been exposed to, I think particularly in 2020. And Iris, she's always this like fun-loving, I put this filter on, she's like this fun-loving, everything's okay. And then you have these scenes with her mom where like, oh, she's completely different. And I finally want her to just break free of that and channel all of that for good, like to pick someone off the ground and say like, shame on you, we need to do better.
Mm-hmm. So some of the, I guess, the cost of being so strong all the time, or the human cost.
I think so. That, but also in a place where Iris, she doesn't kind of cower, like behind her mom, under her mom's thumb, or just put on this cutesy smile and everything's fine. Like, I think there's a lot of wit that she hides behind, and I think this would be a good opportunity for her to just break free of that and just really say what she means and be really like an impactful, God, I don't want to say the word savior, but like, Superman kind of picking up this woman. Like, I don't know. I wish we had that clip to show. Vinessa, I think that was a really powerful clip you shared. I damn near cried. I think I did cry, frankly. But I would love to have that impact from my storyline.
Absolutely. And then Dwayne, because you had mentioned earlier,
Brandon,
for being joined.
Hello.
Hi, Brandon. Oh, can you hear us okay? Can you see us okay?
Hey, what's up?
Hi. So nice to have you. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
you guys hear
being
me?
able to. I can hear you. It does seem like there's a bit of a delay. We're going to see if we can work that out. And I'm actually going to quickly, Dwayne, just because you had mentioned earlier the similarities between Dwayne and Avery, the similarities and the differences. Any thoughts on where Avery might/could go?
Wow, I feel like that's a loaded question.
It's your fault.
It's you know whose fault it is? It's the guy there named Floyd Kane. You know what? I just leave it in the hands of Floyd and the writers. I love the writing team. I love Floyd's ideas. I love the direction he's taking everything. It's been amazing because the journey of Avery every time I think is like, okay, there's nowhere else he can go that can receive much more turmoil. Floyd and the team just come up with some interesting ideas, and he talked about it with me going for the next season, what possibilities could be. And all I have to say is that wow. It should be an interesting ride, and let's just say the drama continues, and I embrace the journey, and I let the writing team handle their side of things, and I just show up and try to be present and enjoy the ride. So I'm open to whatever the future holds for Avery and his journey.
For sure. And Vinessa, let's hear something about Marcy, if there's anything you want to share.
Oh gosh. I'm always interested in the why of things, I think. That's always where I like to start. So I think there's a large part of Marcy that has been a little isolated, a little angry, a little sad, a little melancholy, a little guilty. I think some of the darker parts of Marcy, I think that we've been given tiny little bit of spoonfuls here and there, but I'm interested to go a little deeper into some of her extreme need for isolation and not willing to connect romantically. I'd like to see her dive a lot more into her family and in terms of mental health, and her Aunt Rolanda and all of that happened with, the suicide. I think there's a lot of unspoken conversation that happens, particularly in Black communities, Black families, that we sort of dance around a lot of the mental health issues in our community. So I think it would be interesting to finally open that can of worms up.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And yes, hi, Brandon, we've got you back. I'm definitely going to see if we can hear you okay. Can you still hear me?
Great, yes.
Okay. I might mute myself after asking this question because I'd love if we could get at least one from you. I know the connection's being a bit challenging, so thanks for sticking it out with us. But are you able to tell us what one of your favorite moments so far from seasons 1 through 3 has been?
One of my favorite episodes. Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing over here as well.
No worries, no worries. It doesn't need to be a whole episode. It can be a single moment. It could be a funny behind the scenes thing that happened. It could be a specific scene.
Yeah. No, I was. It was funny because Floyd had asked us just briefly, like he'd sent a message out to us asking us about an episode, and the one that just stuck out, like came to mind right away, was the one about Cheryl's Silly Boy. One because of the story, and then the rest because of just the cast that was brought in. I mean, it was Gail Maurice. Oh my God, we had an incredible. I haven't seen that many Native actors on a set, unless we were all wearing deerskin. You know what I mean? It was really nice to have that, and the story was very powerful.
Definitely. And then there was a question that we kind of threw to every cast member who's here. So if you'd like to tell us, is there anything kind of in the future that you'd like to see Doug explore or learn, or any twists and turns in his character that you think might be really interesting? You hearing me okay? Okay, looks like we may have a bit of a challenge still, but we will soldier through. I actually have a question that anyone can answer. I'm hoping there's different answers, but it could be an overwhelming majority situation. Let's see. The audience wants to know, who is the funniest person on set?
Dwayne.
We have a vote for Cory. We have a vote for Dwayne.
Those are my top two. Yeah.
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 Cory is definitely like the rapper singer.
Megan?
Song out of everything. Anything.
I don't hear funny. I hear annoying a lot from the crew. Like maybe y'all in the casting are funny, but for the crew, it's like, give this guy something to keep him quiet, sedate him somehow. But I think Dwayne is a pretty funny human.
I was gonna say C.
Oh,
David.
yeah.
C. David is funny.
C. David has a lot of
Dry.
like one-liners.
Dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, his timing.
Yeah. So good.
A lot of jokes from his time back in the 70s.
Yeah, it's like the best dad jokes ever. Like, but like it's got a twist. They're good.
Gotta love the dad jokes. The puns are usually welcome. In terms of, this is probably what I'd call a leading question from an audience member. How were your background actors?
Oh, Brittany was the best. She was the most informative background performer that I ever did see.
I wasn't sure if I was allowed to read the person's name, so thank you for knowing who it was.
She stood out. She was a star.
And an audience member just now asking, so Cory would be a great team member for Song Association.
Yeah, for raps, for sure. I want to do I think I said this season 1, I want you two, Vinessa and Cory, to choreograph a big ensemble and have like a musical episode. I'll lip sync. I won't sing, but I'll do the dancing as well.
We already did that. There's a behind the scenes of like a full in the interwebs. There, Cory comes out with full, and I had a triple pirouette in there somewhere. So just
I need to find it. I need to find it. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's out there.
So our finale, I think I heard Floyd thinking about this out loud. It's going to be a musical. I think he said that, right, Floyd?
That sounds like something Floyd would have said.
No, we're going to Barbados or something.
Oh,
yes. Both. Everyone can break out into a song on the beach. There's no one who would be expecting that for the season finale of Diggstown. Not a single person. I don't know if there was kind of an unofficial. I don't quite know whether I'm allowed to ask you this, Floyd, but I'm gonna. Do we know if there's a season 4?
Not yet. I don't think we'll know until I think we're probably another month away from knowing whether or not we have a season 4.
Okay.
I know what I spent a lot of time thinking about season 4 and what I want to do. And and I've spoken to people in the cast about some ideas that I've had. And so it's been, there's a lot. I think when we get to the end of this season,